I conducted a DNA test and discovered that my mother had been lying to me for over 20 years. It turns out my grandfather is my biological... I discovered through a DNA test that my grandfather is actually my biological father. My mom has been hiding this mind-blowing secret for over 20 years. This weekend, I realized my mom isn't just a regular parent. She might be a narcissist or even a full-blown sociopath. To fully grasp the gravity of what she revealed, let me share some background. My mom, my grandparents, and I all lived together until I turned 7. My grandfather is technically my mom's stepfather, but he always felt like a true grandparent to me. When my mom was 28, she had me. My dad was never in the picture. I was told he was a married man my mom had been seeing. One day, he decided to try and mend his relationship with his wife for the sake of his kids and vanished, leaving my mom behind. She found out she was pregnant soon after. She chose not to tell her parents his name and refused to put a name on the birth certificate, believing it wasn't her place to destroy his family. My grandparents supported her through the pregnancy. When I was 6, my mom met Mike, my stepdad, and we moved into our own house. Mike had his quirks. He was kind but didn't want to be a father. My mom oddly adjusted her parenting style to match his strictness despite his disinterest in having kids. Fast forward to the present. With the birth of my son, I became curious about my biological father, mainly to be aware of any potential medical conditions. Last year, I asked my mom again and got the same response. A married man with no pictures or contact information. Determined, I started looking into him but found no records matching the details my mom had given. So she suggested I take an ancestry test. To my shock, a member of my grandfather's family appeared in the results. I confronted my mom last weekend and she needed a few days to recall everything. This weekend, she confirmed that my grandfather is my biological father. The story she told me is so outrageous I can hardly believe it, but I'll share it here. She explained that she was deeply depressed due to not having children, being abused by her grandfather, abandoned by her biological father, and enduring unhealthy relationships, often with married men. Her stepfather, my grandfather, was the first kind person in her life, and they became very close friends, so much so that people would joke about them having an affair, but it was never like that. One drunken night, she confided in him about her desire to have a child. She asked him to help her and gave him a container. He left a sample in it, but quickly realized how crazy this was and asked her to destroy it. She claimed she did, but instead, she used it. Then a week later, the condom split with the married man she was seeing, and she assumed he was the father. My grandfather never suspected a thing. Now the DNA results confirm that my grandfather is my biological father, and I'm at a loss. Here are some of my jumbled thoughts. 1. My mom must be a complete sociopath. Not only did she do this with her stepfather, but she also convinced my grandparents to move in with her and raise his child, lying about the affair, if it happened. Even if her story is true, she must have had some suspicion that I could be his child and chose to lie. 2. How could someone with any empathy or emotions do this to their family? IVDT, I'm not sure what to do with this information or how to process it. I would really appreciate any advice on what my next steps should be. My own mother followed by letting this woman care for her child while she went through cancer treatments. She visits her monthly to check on her. If anyone can lie to her entire family like this and rub their faces in it, I can't see her as someone with feelings, and I don't trust her at all. Even her husband doesn't know about this. Heck, when she met up with me to tell me this, she told her husband she was going to see my son. Her lies never end. While I never realized how crazy my mom is, I knew she was a little nutty. My grandfather, however, is a different matter. He has always been there for me, my rock when I was younger, and dealing with thinking my mom would die before I hit 16. He is always so loving to his wife that the person I thought he was just wouldn't do this. But my mom's story is so disgusting and crazy, why would she lie? But as he is so sensible, why wasn't the advice to go to a sperm donor or bar crawl, dress up, buy a guy a few drinks, and don't use protection? Finally, what do I do with this information? I can't face my family knowing the whole close-knit dynamic is built on a lie. I'm tempted to tell everyone, but my grandma is a saint, and I can't imagine telling her at 83 years old that her husband and daughter have betrayed her. Even though she spent her entire life looking after the woman her husband was cheating on her with, and their affair baby, I think at this stage of her life it may kill her. She has had such a hard life and just doesn't deserve to look back and see that every second of her kindness was wasted. If I could tell the world while protecting her, I would. But I don't think it's right that my mom gets to walk away from this scot-free. And I think it's only right that my grandfather should be told if he doesn't already know. My mom says he doesn't. But how can I believe all of this? If I tell him without my mom talking to him, then I have the best chance of getting the real story. However, I rarely see him without my grandma, and I can pretty much figure out the real story. And I can't help but feel this isn't my mess to clean up. My mom should tell him, and if she says I told him this story, I will know it's an outright lie. So my head is a mess, and my partner is too involved in wanting to protect me, so I could really use some impartial advice on what you guys think I should do. I want what's best for me, my partner, my kid, and my grandma. Update 1. Okay, it's been a few days and the shock has settled somewhat. I read everyone's replies and tried to answer them all, but it has been a busy few days. The original post is here for those who didn't see it. The 3 consistent pieces of advice were to get therapy, that my anger seems to be totally directed at my mom and not towards my grandfather, and to maybe consider that my grandfather has groomed her from a young age. I want to assure everyone that all your comments were listened to. I will correct that it wasn't that I wasn't angry at him, but the shock of that bit hit harder. My mom and I always had a turbulent relationship. He, however, was my rock for my entire life, and this was so out of left field, and unlike the man I knew, that it took me a little longer to realize that this could very well be a form of grooming. I moved the situation forward by texting my mom my feelings. To shorten a very long text, it boiled down to 2 main points. 1. I don't believe your story. You need to tell me what happened. Was this an affair? Was it something more sinister? 2. You need to tell my grandfather. My mom's answer was very short. She didn't mention my feelings or ask how I was doing. I was told she wouldn't speak to me about this again, that she wasn't groomed, and this was her idea. She isn't sorry, and it's my fault for digging into this and forcing her to tell the story. She said she would tell my granddad. The next day, my granddad called me immediately. He sounded, as I felt, VDJ shocked, confused, etc. My mom just said, I'm not as shocked as I thought I would be. He told me his version with 2 key differences. It wasn't a deposit on the side, but my mom had pre-bought a kit that allowed for artificial insemination, which has about the same chance of working as sex itself. He was convinced by her that it was a good idea. He can't remember every argument as it was 33 years ago, but 2 points stick out. You are the person I am closest to, and I trust you. And if I needed a kidney, you would give me that without hesitation. This conversation, along with a few beers, meant he went along with it. However, after he did it, he realized what an utter mistake this was and told my mom, this is a mistake. Let's not do this, and let's not talk about it again as if nothing happened. My mom agreed, said she would discard his sample, and he left for home thinking he avoided the biggest mistake of his life. Mom, of course, did not destroy it and used it. In the eyes of my country's law, this is sexual assault. In my last post, I mentioned my mom was molested by her granddad and abandoned quite publicly by her birth father. Something I didn't mention about my granddad is he also had a rough childhood. His mother died when he was young and his stepmom was abusive. This has led him to forgive any mistakes his family makes and means family comes first without exception, to a fault. Because he views my mom as his daughter, he feels like the villain of the piece. Understanding of mental health wasn't there, and he didn't realize how deep her depression was. He regrets not telling her to see a therapist and feels he failed her massively for not doing so. He is also thinking of telling his wife immediately, but thinks I should have a say in that choice. He empathized with how I was feeling, something my mom did not. I want to believe him. However, as I said earlier in this post, it's this relationship that will impact me more if lost. I spoke to my partner for an outsider's opinion, as she of course knows these people's traits and flaws. She agrees that this sounds plausible in an insane situation. My granddad's flaw in putting family first, my mom's manipulative and lying nature. While her story doesn't completely line up, there could always be the chance they had an affair or a drunken one-night stand that neither will admit to. but nothing has ever made my partner or me feel there was any kind of spark or awkwardness between them to suggest this. My mom also always spins stories to make her look like a saint. The easy option would be to say this was grooming or assault as an easy out. Why make up this completely unbelievable lie as another option? Some people might wonder if my mom is that good at manipulation. There are many small instances, but let me just share the biggest. She once convinced my grandma and granddad to buy a house with her that none of them could afford on their own, outside of their hometown. A couple of years later, she moved out. When I was younger, my grandma said, "You know how convincing your mom can be?" It's only by piecing this together when I was older, and when she tried to convince me with some very skewed point of view or outright lies, that I realized how she communicates isn't normal, but manipulative. So, next steps. My granddad wants all three of us to meet up either this weekend and discuss if we tell my grandmother. He is willing to tell his wife if that's what everyone wants, even knowing it will destroy his marriage. My mom hasn't contacted me since, so I don't know if she will even come. If she does come to this meeting, I will use this opportunity to confirm if my mom did withdraw consent when we are all there. If she admits this, then I am inclined to believe this crazy story is true and that they were both monumentally stupid, and my mom has stabbed him in the back. The shock from my granddad is real, but also our relationship was real, and we were both in the dark, meaning I can see a way of forging our relationship ahead. My mom, however, I do not trust, and if she admits to this, she will also be admitting to sexual assault. I don't imagine her admitting this usually, but she has admitted thus far only with no other options due to an ancestry test. With that relationship, I don't know. I don't trust her, but then she is clearly an older woman with cancer and very deep-seated mental problems. The old relationship will always be dead. But should I set new boundaries and try and form a new relationship with this woman, or just cut contact due to lack of trust? This I don't know yet. I'll also be setting my boundaries as far as the wider family goes. My granddad has stated I should get a say in whether my grandma is told. This is something I don't know the morally right thing to do. She is 83 years old, and this will destroy her. And will she even believe this crazy story? Probably not, as she was also abused by her father. So much abuse in my family has been uncovered with this. It's so sad. But then, if my granddad was sexually abused, is it fair to destroy his marriage? On the flip side, is it right to lie about something this big? This is a decision I can't make for my own mental health, and ultimately it is not my mistake to clean up after. So I will be using this meeting to tell them they need to choose between them what the next steps are. My mom has effortlessly kept this lie from everyone in her life, so that will clearly be her choice. But my granddad, will he be able to lie to his wife? With this, I don't know. I will tell them that they need to choose, and I will go along with that decision. But if they change their mind, they need to tell me so I can prepare for any fallout. Our meeting will be in a week or two, so I will leave a final update then. For now, I wanted to thank everyone who reached out and gave advice. I will be getting to a therapist soon so I can make a better informed decision and can make a clearer choice for what's better for me, my partner, and my child. Someone said I should marry my fiancée GCE, as she has needed to put up with the brunt of my mom's insanity for 4+ years. To those, I will say you are right. She is absolutely amazing, and we have been engaged for a while, but COVID, pregnancy, buying a house, and our first baby have delayed the actual wedding. But she truly is the best and has been a rock throughout all of this. Update 2. It's been a few weeks, and a lot has happened, so as I got such good advice from you guys, I thought I would tell you what happened up until now, and then I won't update any further. Before I continue, I feel I should clarify a comment in my older post. The title said my mom went from normal to narcissist in an hour. She has always been a narcissist. Often narcissists have a golden child and a scapegoat. I was the golden child with no siblings to be a scapegoat. Enter my fiancée GCE, and a scapegoat was found. In the last 8 years, her nature has become more and more obvious to me. The meaner she treated my fiancée GCE, and me being blind to it, failed to defend my partner when I should have genuinely believed it was my mother's love for me. My mom's poor communication skills, which I've been aware of for many years, played a part in this. Anyway, on with the update. My mom, granddad, and I sat down on Good Friday. My mom corroborated my granddad's story that she had stolen his sperm. I took on board what people said about her being abused for years and decided to steer away from the idea that they had an affair, which would mean she was groomed. The truth they have presented is so bizarre, but it was over 30 years ago, and without it, I wouldn't be here. It's what they both are saying, so I turned the conversation to how we move forward. Originally, I wasn't going to comment on whether we should tell anyone or not, as it's their mess. But I knew that my mom would argue for keeping it quiet, which she did, and not having an opinion felt the same as having an opinion on it. So when they asked what I wanted to do, the deciding factor came down to a friend's advice. Will telling your grandma help you in any way? And no, it wouldn't. So I agreed to keep it quiet. My mom then accidentally told me she had lied to my stepdad, saying I was preventing her from seeing my kid, which I thought was really not okay. I'm angry with her for a justifiable reason and am trying to salvage our relationship despite having no trust in her, and she's blaming me for this. So I told her she needs to tell her husband the real reason I haven't been as close. After this conversation, I had 3 days off work and wanted some time and space to put it behind me, book some therapy, and spend time with my partner and kid, which never happened. That night, somebody tried to reverse a car through my neighbor's house in revenge for what the police told us was a petty squabble. The neighbors got a rifle, guns are super rare in the UK, and shot at them. Of course, the police were called by numerous people on the street, and thank the gods my child slept through it. But my partner and I were nervous wrecks for a long time after. So goodbye, relaxing weekend, and thanks for ruining Easter. After making sure my family was safe, I picked this family drama back up and met my mom and stepdad last weekend. This was to set clear boundaries in the relationship going forward. My trust in her is broken, and honestly, I don't think she has a long enough life left to rebuild it completely due to cancer. But my relationship is separate from her and my son's relationship, who loves his Nana and has been kept separate from all of this. I feel very distant from my close-knit family these days. But I guess that's what happens when they lie to you your whole life. My mom has given me an attempt at an apology, however weak. I have told her my feelings, which haven't been understood, and I have set new boundaries which will probably be ignored. So I will keep my partner's mother's advice to heart. If you can offer a relationship to just one person knowing you will get nothing back, you will have led a good life. Then, finally, as of today, my partner and I can announce she has been pregnant throughout all this storm. Due to the extra stresses, we have been super nervous that the baby was okay, but in the first scan, the baby was moving around with a strong, healthy heartbeat. Thank you again, everyone, for the help and advice you gave me. Update 3. The full details are in my post history, so I'll try and be brief here. My mom lied about my dad's identity my whole life, and I recently found out she sexually assaulted her stepfather, who I have always seen as my granddad. He is actually my father. She lied to me my whole life. My whole life has been a lie, and now I'm in the awful situation of not being able to tell anyone the truth, as it would devastate my grandma, who is a saint, and has spent her entire life looking after and caring for my mom and granddad. At 86, she does not deserve this news that would rip our family apart. I know I need therapy, but I have a toddler and a pregnant partner, so I have no time or money for it. Despite everything, I could forgive this situation because without it, I wouldn't be here. Nor would my kid. What has really hurt me is the lying to others about why I have been distant. She told her husband I was blocking her from seeing her grandkid, blaming me for being upset. Her lack of empathy or understanding is striking. Everything she says shows she does not understand why I am upset. My partner has been a goddamn rock, and although she isn't a huge fan of my mother, she has tried to remain impartial and polite, as have I. Despite this, last year my mom and I were quite close, though not the best at communicating. We used to chat every few days. My mom has had cancer since I was 15. She was given a year to live, and I am now 31. It's come back, and I don't think she has long. She is now using a wheelchair. I want her to have as much time with her grandkid before she goes, and both my partner and I want to be able to bury the hatchet so when she passes we can say we tried our best and won't feel any regrets. But whenever either of us see her or speak to her, we just feel angry about the past wrongs, the new ones, the shock VJ everything. Every friend we ask who knows the full story just says they would refuse to see her or be unable to forgive her, and I get it. But I could really use some advice on how to forgive so future me doesn't feel guilty when she is gone in a few months. Does anyone have any help? Update 4. After getting no advice on the last post, I figured there would never be an update to share. Throughout most of this, shock was the predominant feeling. Then, about 3 weeks ago, all the emotions hit me like a ton of bricks, and I really started to struggle. In November, my partner gave birth to a beautiful baby. She is tired from getting up to feed him, and I didn't have the capacity to ignore her tired shortness and not take it personally. The UK health system is slow, and counseling only started 3 weeks ago, so I did not know how to heal or find forgiveness for anyone, despite my mom being very sick. But last Thursday, something big changed. In writing my thoughts down, and after not really knowing the rules of updating on each sub, I thought I would compile the post together and put the update here. Last week, after seeing how much I was struggling, my partner reached out to my mom to tell her how much it was affecting me. My mom's reaction was, "Sorry he is hurting. I wish he would talk to me, but I don't want to hurt everyone by telling the truth." To which my partner replied, "As a mother, I'm sure you don't want to leave this world hurting your son. In not telling everyone, you are leaving him the scapegoat, and you need to find a solution." To my surprise, this worked. She sat down and told my Nana and her sister her version of the truth. As soon as I heard my Nana knew the truth, I called her and sobbed. The truth has lifted a huge mental load for me, and for the first time in nearly a year, I can think without a huge cloud over everything. I think this secret was leaving me more and more depressed, and while I was outwardly fine, it was taking an even bigger toll than I realized. The shock had saved me in the last 3 weeks. Now that the truth is out, I can function. My biggest issue was feeling like a scapegoat, and now that has been alleviated. Update 5. The full details are in my post history, so I'll try and be brief here. My mom lied about my dad's identity my whole life, and I recently found out she sexually assaulted her stepfather, who I have always seen as my granddad. He is actually my father. She lied to me my whole life. I was unsure if it was the right thing to do to share the truth. I can revoke my silence, but couldn't take back the truth. So I chose to wait until I knew what to do. But I'm not sure I would have ever figured that out. Another thought was, if I waited for my mom to pass away, is it fair to share this with her sister, who then has to sit with that knowledge without the opportunity to ask any questions herself? I know I spoke in circles with friends and my partner and did the best I could so I won't beat myself up too much. But I felt a physical weight lift from my shoulders when I knew the lie was out. I still don't believe their story. However, my mom keeps mentioning she thought my real dad was Robert from school, even though I know he doesn't exist. At least this doesn't affect my identity. My Nana's opinion? My Nana remains a saint. She believed them totally, as she knows how dedicated her husband is to helping his children and knows how bad my mom's mental health was. She loved her family and is happy for me that I found out my dad loves me. She is disappointed with her husband for not telling her when he found out a year ago, but is happy that it resulted in me, as she couldn't love me more. She is sad I had to deal with this while raising a baby and didn't think it was fair on them to put me through it. I named my baby after her, as she's amazing. My aunt's opinion, my aunt reached out to wish me well and said nothing is affected in our relationship by my parents. She found out a little later and has lost a lot of respect for her sister and stepdad, but knows she loves her family, even if she is disappointed and her trust is shaken. She criticized them for making me stay silent, saying it would kill my Nana, and thinks that was cowardly and wrong of them. But she knows she needs her family, and my mom's poor health needs her. She has told her children, and it is up to them if they believe the story or not. So that's the end of it. I have bought a few self-help books, got a therapist who is helping, and am just trying to rebuild after a year of hell. My mom probably only has a few months left, but then she was given a year to live when I was 17, and I'm 32 now, so we shall see. But with the truth out, I can at least start forging a small relationship based on truth. However, I doubt it will ever be as strong as it was, simply because she doesn't have time to rebuild it to that extent. Ultimately, what my aunt said really rang true to me. It's a shame because even if the story is true, nobody will ever believe it, and they will live with that stain on them forever. A few comments saying the cancer is fake. I totally understand why, but she lost 5 pounds, her back collapsed, and she recently needed a catheter. This part isn't faked.